This is a dual Coda Torxica, and it is a very flexible weapon. First of all, this weapon is definitely steel path viable, but it is not a room nuker. With its valence bonus, where you can switch the elements here and there, it provides multiple builds. In this video, I have categorized two builds, the budget-friendly ones and a high-end expensive build. Because this gun's multiple playstyle really synergizes with different arcanes, ranking from the more affordable ones to the really expensive ones. By the way, we will be focusing on a more generalized aspect, so I will be using the Scourger Dedicant Eximus units in this video. And there are no weapons platform ability, which means every other Warframe can use this build and possibly deal more damage than what I have. Welcome to the channel, I'm Maggie, and now let's jump right into it. First, let's go over some fixed mods for the builds. On the companion, we have Tenacious Bond for 1.2x critical multiply. And then we have Reinforced Bond for 60% fire rate. On the gun itself, go for Prime Target Cracker or regular Target Cracker, Hornet Strike and Galvanized Shot, and then that leaves our 5 other mod slots for the really flexible mods. First, let's go over dual Coda Torxica's unique trait. Is that for every time you kill an enemy, 3 spores fly to targets around it in a 20-meter radius. It doesn't only just force procs code status up to 6 code stacks, it also makes it so that affected enemies are 50% more vulnerable to damage. And this is the core aspect on how this weapon melts enemies. Let's go over the budget builds first. First one on the list, which is Heat build. This build focuses on status damage. It synergizes well with Cascadia Flare, but more explanation on that later. And naturally, we would go for Heat as the valence bonus. For the 5 mod slots, we go for a faction mod and Pistol Elementalist that deals more status damage. But since we're using Scourger units, it doesn't showcase that well compared to other builds. And then critical mods. This would differ in playstyle. If you like playing headshots, going for Galvanized Crosshairs as it gives you 320% crit chance in total, which then you can slap on Pistol Acuity and Sharpen Bullets to really ramp up this weak point playstyle even more. But if you are like me, who doesn't have good aim and feel like it's a trouble to aim at heads, we can go for Prime or regular Pistol Gambit. Then we add in Lethal Torrent and Galvanized Diffusion. With this build, from the weapon alone, you are going to build Cascadia Flare stacks up faster than a weak point build. Since we are using Scourger units, the faction damage mod can't actually shine here. But as you can see in the gameplay footage, it's still able to find itself handling these Eximus units pretty well. Now let's go into detail on how this works. First off, Cascadia Flare. It gets triggered when you apply heat status. It also means Warframe abilities, not only weapons. For example, my Chroma's Spectral Scream or Elemental Ward is able to build this up by itself. Once stacked at max rank, it gives you 480% damage increase. And this arcane is pretty affordable too, that is why it is in the budget builds. The gameplay this revolves around is benefiting from the Reinforced Bond's fire rate to build up Cascadia Flare, if you don't have any other ways to. And this right here is the entire Heat build. While this build is definitely still viable, but compared to the high-end build at the end, it lacks in some ways. Next up, the Electricity build. This build also focuses on status damage, but not electricity, but slash status. For the arcane, we are using Conjunction Voltage, also very affordable, therefore in the budget builds. For the valence bonus, of course electricity to proc Conjunction Voltage. We go for Faction mod and Pistol Elementalist for more status damage, and this time we are actually switching out Galvanized Diffusion. Here's why. Conjunction voltage works similar to Cascadia Flare. Stacked at max rank gives 60% reload speed and 120% multi-shot for 12 seconds. This lets us open up a mod slot to go for even more critical mods, effectively replacing Governance Diffusion. First of all, we go for either Prime or regular Pistol Gambit for general crit chance, or Governance Crosshair for a higher crit chance, but at the cost of you need to aim for headshots. I personally went for the Prime Pistol Gambit playstyle because I really suck at aiming. Then we can add in Lethal Torrent for the fire rate and a little bit of multi-shot. For the last mod slot, I went for Merciless Gunfight. I personally do not recommend going for Magnetic Might, as the additional bonus Magnetic will actually lower the chance of your slash status proccing. This right here is the full electricity build. And as you can see in the gameplay footage, it can handle itself pretty well with these Eximus Skuldra units, but keep in mind it really lacks in direct damage. When compared with the heat build, these two pretty much fall into the same range of damage. The difference being the heat build has more direct damage and able to proc slash and heat at the same time, while the electricity build prime slash faster, way faster, but have lower direct damage. Keep in mind that I'm testing both builds on Skuldra units, so expect even better results from other factions that have faction mods. Next up, the Cold build. This build focuses on direct damage. With the help of the Arcane Secondary Shiver, we can come up with two ways to benefit from its cold status proc. If you have some other way to proc 10 stacks of cold on enemies, or you feel like you have enough damage for the 6 cold procs from the gun's spores, you can either go for Toxic or Electric as the valence bonus, and put in the other element to make Corrosive on the gun itself. This opens up one mod slot where you can swap in for Lethal Torrent. Then you can either go for Merciless Gunfight or Magnetic Might to deal with shielded enemies. And naturally, Governance Diffusion for even more multi-shot. And if you're like me who doesn't have another way to proc cold stacks, you can change the valence bonus to cold, mod for Corrosive with Electric and Toxin mods, and then again Merciless Gunfight for more critical damage. Both builds will differ from your setups, Warframes, companions, etc. with the better scenario where you don't need to mod cold on the dual Coda Torxica itself, that means the valence bonus, but from other sources, like Frost. Here from the gameplay, you can see that with max cold stacks, I deal more damage. I handle each Eximus faster, but at the expense of Lethal Torrent, which means less multi-shot and less fire rate. This right here is the cold build that I went for. Finally, we have the more high-end expensive build, which it is because of the synergy between the Arcane Secondary Outburst and your melee weapon. First, let's talk about Secondary Outburst. It is way more expensive, like way more, and it synergizes with your melee weapon. With at 12x max combo multiplier for most melee weapons, you get 240% critical chance and critical damage increase, which in itself is totally insane by the way. There's also one more arcane that synergizes well with this build. With the arrival of Temporal Archimedia came along the Arcane Hotshot, which on Warframe's hit ability, triggering 300% critical chance increase in max stacks. But I don't have it. That thing is insanely expensive. So yeah, no. So we have the cheaper variants of it. Arcane Avenger and Arcane Crepuscular. Yeah. Now, back to the Secondary Outburst. Since it synergizes with melee combo counter, all you needed to make sure is to provide the combo counter whenever you want it. Some might prefer initial combos, but this is totally up to your own preference. You can use any melee weapon that you like to build the secondary out stacks. For me, I've gone with the Okina Incarnate, as it can help me get combo from slash status, working the same way with Relentless combination, but again, This is totally up to your own preference on how do you want to build the combo up. As for the guns itself, we first go for a corrosive combination, either electricity or toxin as your valence bonus, and the opposite from a mod for corrosive, Galvanous Diffusion and Lethal Torrent for fire rate and multi-shot, Merciless Gunfight for critical damage, and finally in the last mod slot, Magnetic Might for even more critical damage, and to deal with shielded enemies. This right here is the final build. This build focuses on direct critical hits, while at the same time stripping enemy armor and shields. As you can see in the gameplay footage, I only used nearly 30 seconds to deal with these 8 Eximus units. Normal steel buff units absolutely melt in the face of these. Now for the entire showcase as of now in the video, I do not have any purple Archon shards equipped, no weapons damage buffing ability, and not damaged by enemies, therefore no benefits from Arcane Avenger. And my mods aren't even fully ranked, so you will expect even more damage with a properly built and equipped setup. Before we end the video, if you enjoyed it, consider leaving a like and subscribe. And comment down below what do you think about this weapon. Thanks for all the support. And I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye!